Hello, Abraham. I'd like to thank you for all your offerings. They are all so deep and so fresh. We can always have new understanding about all of them. So my question is about resistance. Is resistance at the core of the human nature, or it's something we get along our trail? Could you also clarify resistance in the context of contrast? Thank you very much.
We like your word fresh. That's what these broadcasts are. They are fresh. And you all bring the freshness to it. The life that you are living brings the freshness to it. You bring the ongoing, continuous evolution to it. We liked your last question, especially, to clarify contrast and resistance, or resistance in the context of contrast. So you came into this physical experience knowing that there would be contrast, choices, contrast, choosing. You intended to utilize your emotions in order to allow alignment instead of resistance while you're choosing. So resistance is exploring the contrast, acknowledging the unwanted, and then trying to deal with that. Allowing is exploring the contrast, deciding or choosing wanted, and giving your attention to that. Resistance is the pushing against unwanted, and you picked every bit of that up on your physical trail. You were born wanting contrast, wanting variety, wanting to choose, intending to utilize your guidance system in order to allow rather than resist. In fairness, you knew that you would have to have the experience in order to choose, but you trusted that your emotions would guide you. You trusted that you wouldn't be willing to put up with negative emotion, negative feeling for long. You expected that your selfish nature, your propensity to promote self, your understanding that you only have perspective of self would sustain you, and indeed it is. What causes so many humans to step into the realm or attitude of resistance while they are exploring contrast? It's your exposure to the critical nature of others and their seeming need to control your behavior in order to affect the way they feel. Now you're asking, we can hear you. Well, who started that? In other words, how did we get there? First, we want to say, it's not a bad thing that you feel resistance. It's not a bad thing that you're utilizing your guidance system. In fact, wouldn't you say that the fact that your guidance system is set up the way that it is because there is a non-physical understanding, that there's likelihood that as you're making choices that you might get yourself into a place of resistance? And why is that? Why is that understood so much from non-physical? Because the law of attraction is understood from non-physical. That which is likened to itself is drawn, is understood by non-physical. So it's obvious to all of us from our non-physical perspective that the law of attraction causes trending. That attention to some aspect of contrast could cause that aspect of contrast, will cause that aspect of contrast to become more. So the contrast in its smaller, more subtle state didn't present the problem to you that it does when it gets bigger. Isn't that all necessary? Must it not be necessary for everything to be able to expand enough that you can make better and better, more personal, more active choices about it? Isn't it all an important part of the mix? And isn't coming around to understanding it, doesn't it render it all right? And aren't you feeling less every day a need to control anything or anyone as you're getting it personally, as you're integrating or coming into alignment with what your inner being knows? Don't you just adore being more of a step fiver than a step oneer? In other words, step one is contrast, which causes you to ask. Step one is ask, but contrast calls it. Step two is the answer of the asking. It's automatic. The law of attraction causes that, and your inner being's focus is about that. Source answers. Step three is you feel the emotion and you deliberately release any hindrance to the allowing. Step three is allowing. Step four is you've practiced it, you've focus wheeled it, you've segment intended it, you've positive aspected it. You have, someone was asking the question about that earlier. All of those processes just mostly doing the inactive box now. And we say the inactive box is really the most powerful hands-on process, because as you release resistance, everything that you've asked for comes to you. That's what step four is. And then step five is adoring all of the variety, all of the contrast, because you know what to do and can do it easily. So there's no pushing against. There's just exploring contrast. Here now, in response to your magnificent question, we're a little over time, we know. But we must say this to you now while it is active in your vibration and now in all of our vibrations because of you. Step five is the having what could potentially be a resistant moment. But it isn't a resistant moment because you're acknowledging the differences, but you're not pushing against it. Step one is knowing what you don't want, knowing what you do want, feeling more of the emotion about what you don't want. Really good distinction.